Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 24th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we've made it through another week down here in the South. The COVID pandemic still is rising, over 144,000 deaths in America, and no end in sight.
Well, we're going to hope that there's end in sight, but they're also going to be sponsored, today's show sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away. You can also follow us on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, the pause is feeling more like the 7th inning stretch. I haven't seen the 7th inning stretch since last year at Big C, but I'll never do the 7th inning stretch on the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced in helping loved ones and their families get through things. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, as we move into more and more distractions in the United States, Charlton, more and more people are forgetting about our great veterans who have served this country. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number each of our shows, Charlton, because we lose some 22 veterans a day to suicide. And a horrific number of disease has been foregoing in this country for a long, long time that our administration seems to ignore and not pay any attention to, Charlton. And we got to get more American citizens involved in the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, not just because of the veterans, Charlton, because of everyday citizens, as we think we lose our young people in America to suicide at a horrific rate. This is a disease that can be captured here in the U.S. It can be stopped only if we had more participation.
And we will do our part, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get them some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home of weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid. And when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships doing it. And sports teams are doing it too, even though there are no fans in the seat. You can watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. And I really look forward to the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You know, last night I was watching on television. Obviously, you got to watch it on TV because they won't let anybody go to the stadium unless you're on the team, Big C. But I saw a beautiful thing last night. Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine. They had the cutouts in the stands. I really wish with all the technology in the Hollywood, they could put a CGI-generated fan base. They could take pictures. They do it on video games. Why not do it for TV? Maybe that's coming too. But what I really liked is that the whole team for the Dodgers and the Giants, they all took a knee before the national anthem, and then some took one during the national anthem. I thought it was a nice sign of respect and unity. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, 4 years after the fact, Charlton, that, Colin Kaepernick set a precedent far as taking a knee for the national anthem, and everybody ostracized him from the world of professional sports and villainized him also. It's kind of I'm at odds when it comes to this, Charlton, as far as people waiting so long to take this stance. It's been 57 days since the death of George Floyd, the murder that happened to him at the hands of the police force in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And here it is, Charlton. Now people are wanting to say, okay, we understand. We've understood as Negroes for a long time the atrocities that have taken place inside and outside of sports. I guess there's also always a day of reckoning when people will say, okay, we're going to do this now, and hopefully we get some change from it. But, you know, unity is something that's always been there in sports. I just wish they had done it 4 years ago.
Yeah, I wish I'd made my millions many years ago, Big C. Sometimes it takes time to catch up to you. But what I did see is something that I'd never seen before. I mean, I've been watching baseball all my life, been playing it up until I got into high school, Big C. And I know oftentimes the only time I've ever seen every player on both teams take a knee is when someone was injured. Like if someone broke a leg, or if someone was, you know, knocked out on the sidelines, or if someone had just, you know, been injured during a football game. But I've never seen, because usually when I see people take a knee for an injury, it's on a football stadium. But I've never seen that on a baseball diamond, whether it's little league, high school, college, or pro. Have you ever seen that in your lifetime for baseball, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, no. I mean, this is something new, Charlton. It's coming along with the movement that's been going on. And I think that the main thing about this movement that people look at in Black Lives Matter is like the president doesn't see how it stands. You know, is that white America has recognized what Black America has been saying for a long, long time, Charlton, that it's not easy being black in America, that it's a challenge, it's a job every day just to survive. And as they have watched the horrific events that have turned out over the weeks in the past couple of months here in America, Charlton, that our administration is attacking white people for caring about black people.
Yeah.
And that's what has really created the sovereignty that's going on now, Charlton, is that the administration has been attacking white people, white kids on the street, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so people now are saying, hey, this is bigger than even what black people have been saying.
Yeah, I've always thought, like Dr. King said, people need to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And POTUS doesn't agree. He'll attack anybody. It's just now he's getting to the white people, and they're starting to say, wait a minute, this doesn't feel so good when their own kids are being attacked and antagonized. Major League Baseball opener, and this is odd, but obviously, you know, there's been so much of a lack of something, Big C. Major League Baseball opener viewed the regular season game. It was the most viewed regular season game in 9 years when you talk about the New York Yankees, even though it was a rain-shortened 4-1 win over the Washington Nationals, the defending world champion Washington Nationals, on Thursday night. It averaged only 4 million viewers on the mothership, according to Nielsen's, and the game peaked at about 8:30 with 4.48 million viewers. When you think about the Super Bowl getting 150 million, but there's, 4 million viewers when people really hadn't seen sports in a long time, I would have thought the numbers would be much higher than that, Big C. The city of Los Angeles is 3 million on its own and 20 million in the basin, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at this, Charlton. I mean, the average fan is looking at this as a practice game that people are watching. I mean, there's no fanfare in the stadium, and that's what draws the interest of fans is the electricity that goes throughout the crowd. And when you think about 4 million, that's a paltry number.
Yeah.
When you think about Major League Baseball, that's nothing compared to a playoff or a World Series or even a normal regular season game. But there's a lot of frustration that's going on in America, Charlton. As people say that sports will be the great uniter, people right now are struggling, Charlton, with their livelihoods. When you think you got 45 million Americans unemployed that are losing their unemployment benefits this week. We had another 1.34 million Americans apply for unemployment last week.
Wow. Right
now, Americans are struggling and worrying about survival. They're not all that concerned about millionaire athletes that are going out there and bickering and fighting over how much money they're going to get paid in a strike-shortened season, a COVID-shortened season, Charlton. They're more concerned, can they feed their kids? Can they pay their rent? And now the president is trying to force them to go back to school. And, parents don't want to be sending their kids back to school in a COVID environment, Charlton.
Yeah, I've heard some people say, well, the kids, they tend to tolerate it better, but they go back to their parents, Big C. It hasn't been since, I think it was 2011, that a regular season game drew 4.7 million viewers, and that was the Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. And now New York City, I believe there's about 8 million in population. That's just what I hear. So even if you were to take away the whole country, and this is the thing that I love sports, it's good that it's back, I guess, but it doesn't make sense that you play in a burning house. But when you think about so many people saying, we got to get sports back, almost every league has said, we got to get sports back. I haven't seen an NBA game yet, other than maybe 5 minutes of highlights, before I went to bed at night. So I haven't been running to my TV so I could watch guys run around really with no fans because it doesn't have the energy. I did see some of the Dodgers-Giants game last night, and I watched it for a couple of innings, and the Dodgers, took care of the Giants 8-1. But it was missing something, and I wonder, as people look further into COVID rising, if they're going to say, why did we do this? It doesn't make any sense. It was just for TV and money, and the guys that own the team, they were not in the stadiums, Big C. Your thoughts?
They're not in the stadiums, and you talk about the first game of the night, Charlton. You got New York, number one media market in the United States. And those 4 million viewers, I'm going to guarantee you that 3/4 of them were between Washington and New York. The rest of the country was disinterested, Charlton, when you think about the fight that's going on in America right now.
Yeah.
And Americans are fighting for survival. I know we all want to have sports back.
Yeah.
But sports has to be real sports, not a made-up situation that's just going to appease a few people, Charlton. The electricity of being able to go to a game, fan participation makes the game.
Oh, it does.
And without that, people are going to see a huge void in baseball, basketball, football, and hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they piped in a little bit of crowd noise, but if you're like me, sometimes when I watch an event, I turn down the volume just to see what am I seeing that's not being covered up by the noise. And it was kind of like turning down the volume. It's only exciting for a little bit, and then I want some noise. Tonight's games, obviously, the Yankees and the Nationals underway, and then the Giants are at the Dodgers for Game 2. And that's also followed with the Braves. They're at the Mets up in New York, Big C. The Tigers are at the Reds. The Brewers are at the Cubs. I saw some of the Chicago game against Milwaukee. Again, just seemed Wrigley Field with no one in it. I know people say they want to see the game and they can't wait to get. But Harry Carey would have said, why? Harry Carey would have said, why are we playing? And there are no fans here at Wrigley Field, but people want to do it anyway. The Mariners at the Astros and the Angels at the Oakland A's. And ironically, I'm just being silly, but the A's seeing no one in attendance is really not much of a fall off from last year's game. Big C, your thoughts?
No, the A's will have an advantage, Charlton. When you used to play at a ballpark that had no fans,
nobody.
Think about the Baltimore Orioles, the Oakland A's, Charlton.
Yeah.
Those teams, they're at home with nobody in the stands.
Yeah, they feel at home. But I know it's again, when I hear people are saying, I'm glad that sports is back, there's finally something to do, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But everybody's got to do what they want to do. I want to jump down to the NBA bubble, Big C. Houston Rockets, Austin Rivers. No one can question if someone has a family emergency. But there's a lot of guys that have had emergencies in the last couple of days. He left the bubble for a family reason. And I believe Doc Rivers, even though Doc Rivers coaches the LA Clippers, he didn't leave, as far as I know. But when he left the bubble to go attend to some family matters, they're optimistic he's going to return to the NBA bubble in Orlando within a few days. But he still has the quarantine, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's more and more players that are leaving the bubble every time you turn around. I think the third member of the Los Angeles Clippers also left the bubble today, Charlton, for family members. You got to understand these guys have wives and extended families that they deal with. And they also are understanding that they really don't want to play in this COVID environment.
Yeah.
I think that's the thought that's being lost through the media and even in the public, is that you're questioning a guy who's saying that I don't want to be in a pandemic situation.
Yeah.
My personal feelings. This is me as an individual. And I have to gauge, is it that important for me to go out there? I'm not going to win a championship.
Right.
And everybody wants us to go out there and participate. And if I get COVID and I go back home to my family, to my spouse, and she has some pre-existing condition, or one of my children who has a pre-existing condition, how is that going to affect us in the long term? What happens if one of them ends up in a COVID state in the hospital, Charlton, on a respirator, or potentially loses their life? This is what players are waging. So as the media talks about the dying of having live sports back and all that,
yeah,
these athletes are thinking about not dying, Charlton.
Yeah. And even, I mean, most people are recovering from COVID, but if you get sick when it's not necessary, that's the part. I would never swim in a pool that says closed due to fecal contaminations and say, I'm going to swim anyway, Big C. Is Lou Williams. He joins Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell as the Clippers so far to leave the NBA bubble. And I know everybody's going to say, well, there haven't been positive tests yet that we know of. And now maybe I'm a bit cynical. I know you and I don't always agree on things. But somewhere in the back of my mind, when it comes to sports organizations that make money when you play and they don't make money when you don't play, I think about the concussion settlement that the NFL knew that players were having issues that were mortal issues, Big C, and they did not tell any of the players for decades in the NFL. And now I see these same leagues that make even more money than when they concealed how CTE was actually causing mortal harm to their players. And now they're saying, hey, even though they're spiking all over the country, nobody's testing positive in the bubble. How do you trust that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, to say that nobody's testing in the bubble and you're down in Florida, one of the hottest states in the nation as far as COVID rising in this country, Charlton. You think about the president. All of a sudden today, yesterday, he cancels the Republican convention in Jacksonville.
That's all
saying that, it's not safe to put that many Republicans in one confined spot, even though we don't mind if it's Democrats, but we can't put that many Republicans in an infested situation. But we've had players test positive down in Orlando, Charlton, since arriving. I mean, they've quarantined players, but
yep.
There's no way that you're going to be able to go through this amended season down in Orlando and not have players test positive for COVID-19. It's impossible, whether you want to let the test be known that it was positive or whether you want to conceal it. But there's no way that you're going to be able to keep all of these players and coaches and staff and media and all these other people safe from COVID-19. It's impossible.
Yeah, well, let me ask you, because I know you trust everything those owners say, those, what do you call the oligarchy of power, Big C, them good old boys. But you mentioned something that I maybe was aware of it, but I didn't pay much attention. You said POTUS, that he canceled the political rally down in Jacksonville, Florida, I guess for the grand old party, Big C. He canceled that because it's going to be full of Republican voters. But they were just telling us that COVID is not that bad. He didn't even wear a mask other than the last couple of days. Are you sure he canceled it, or he's talking about canceling it, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, no, he canceled it. And if you recall a few months back, he said it was a Democratic hoax, COVID-19, Charlton. And after him holding this, lackluster rally he had in Oklahoma City with 6,000 people showing
in Tulsa.
up. And,
in Tulsa.
Over 700 people ending up with COVID-19 in this rally. And now that Florida is the new epic hotspot in America for COVID-19, and this Republican convention was going to have 20,000 Republicans stuck in a hot, poorly ventilated room down in Jacksonville for hours, Charlton. He said he told his staff that it wasn't safe. Which, he likes to capitulate from time to time and twist the truth. His staff told him it wasn't safe.
Yeah.
And so he buckled under pressure and saying, well, we're not going to have it. Now he's trying to take it back to North Carolina since Florida is rejecting him on having his convention down there, Charlton. But here it is, you're the president of the United States. And you just admitted finally, after 4 months and 144,000 deaths in America, that this is truly a pandemic and that it's killing people and it's not safe to put people in a room together. But yet you want to send school children back to school. You're saying it's not safe for older Republicans to get together.
Yeah.
But it's safe for these states where it's just overflowing, Charlton,
Yeah.
with positive cases for your children to go back to school. But his son is not going to be going to public school, Charlton, where he'll be exposed to COVID-19.
Yeah, he probably won't, huh? I just thought.
No, he won't. His son, the president has a son
Yeah.
that's about 15 years old now.
Yeah.
He will not be going to public school, Charlton, where he'll be exposed to COVID-19. Not only that, the school that he attended last year in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
the private school, is closed. It's not reopening, Charlton, because of COVID-19.
Really? I didn't know that. I did not know that. That's very interesting. So now that we confirmed that POTUS won't be sending his kid back to school, and I love the NBA players. Think about this. Sometimes I'm not the smartest person in a room,
We're
but
not gonna hold that against
don't
you.
hold it against. And that's sometimes when I'm by myself, Big C, which happens to be a lot lately. But when the president won't even go to Florida, and you have some NBA players that are learning to read, and they're deciding, let me get out of this bubble too. If the most protected man in the world decides that he won't go to Florida with all of his protection, and then NBA players are saying, hey, I'll go, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, think about the number of trips that the president took to Mar-a-Lago prior to April of this year.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, he was in Mar-a-Lago every other weekend. The president has not been down to Mar-a-Lago since early March of 2020.
Yeah.
Now, that's his home. He has a golf course that he raves about down there all the time.
Yeah.
But he refuses to go down to the state of Florida to his own residence. He'd rather go to Virginia now instead of Mar-a-Lago. So he knows
Wow.
the probability if he rolls the dice too many times, he's going to end up with COVID-19.
Yeah.
Even though he makes everybody around him get tested.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't dodge that mosquito that hits you on the neck.
Yeah, we know. If he tests positive, they wouldn't tell anybody anyway. How would people think he's going to tell the truth? He never tell the truth. If he probably already has it, Big C. That's why he wants the people to wear a mask now, if you read between the lines. So when you look at his cabinet, I'm sure they were all willing to go down to Florida because they say as a host, Attorney General William Barr can't go. You can't have Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross. He can't go. Mark Esper can't go. None of them can go. Mike Pence can't go. The First Lady can't go. But the really telling thing is his son cannot go to school.
Well, you talk about Mike Pence. When was
Yeah.
the last time you saw Mike Pence?
He's under 2 weeks
in
quarantine.
public, Charlton?
Been about
For a
2
long
weeks.
time.
It's been 2 weeks,
That's
Big
what
C.
happens when you get COVID-19.
Yeah.
You self-quarantine. We haven't seen Mike Pence in a couple of weeks.
And not in 2 weeks. But some people don't read, Big C. It's all fair love and war. I wanna touch on something. Man, our show goes by way too fast. But I love a lot of things that are happening. I want to get onto something that makes a lot of sense to me. It's called the Black Athletic Director Alliance. They created a group to develop more black administrators, Big C, in Division I athletics. An athletics director, they feel motivated to take a stand and make some changes in college sports. In a press release announcing the existence this week, the group, approximately 55 athletic directors, they said is committed to promoting the growth, development, and evaluation of black athletic administrators at the D1 level in college. I think that's a good thing. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charles, it's a great move. When you think about this, 347 Division I programs in the United States, and only 16% of those, Charlton, have African-American athletic administrators.
Yeah.
So when you think about this disproportionate number of African-American athletic administrators, we know they exist in the historical black colleges, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
But there has to be a way, just like with the Rooney Rule in the NFL, the farce that it is creating opportunity for African-Americans to have these administrative jobs.
Yeah.
We have some very intelligent people on the black side in America, but they're just not given the opportunity. A lot of nepotism has gone on to keep them out of that, Charlton.
Yep.
And the racial divide that you have to fight against. Like I said, who's in the room where it happens? I will always keep that terminology there.
Yeah.
Because that door is closed for many African Americans for decades that are qualified, a lot of them overqualified, Charlton. When you get to some universities and you look at situations where people are unqualified. When a coach gets a job at the University of Charleston,
Yeah.
every one of his kids and family members that want to get a job get the job also through nepotism.
Yeah.
Where a qualified African American won't get the opportunity. So this is a great move by these D1 African American administrators.
Yeah, like I've often been told when I was growing up, you got to make sure you help yourself, and to have those administrators stop being so fractured, Big C, and starting to put their hands together. A fist is hard to break. When you open your hand, it's easy to break a finger. As a fist is a lot stronger. I want to, you talked about Mike Pence. No one seems to have found him in the last 14 days. If that makes any sense to people. He refused to wear a mask, and you haven't seen him in about the last 2 weeks anywhere. That makes sense. Michigan State, the entire football team, they'll quarantine for 14 days, kind of like Mike Pence is right now, after a second staff member and another level player test positive for COVID-19. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is going to be an ongoing event in college athletics if these universities defy science and open up. You're putting more and more young people and older people in peril. You're talking about a staff member, so that's somebody who's older.
Yeah.
You're talking about an athlete, somebody who's younger. But, COVID-19 is non-discriminatory. It's not racist. None of those things. It don't care about your finances.
No.
It's going to come find you. It's like that mosquito that keeps buzzing around. That's what COVID-19 is, Charlton.
Yeah.
And here it is, Michigan State in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
One of the most wealthiest Power 5 conferences in America.
Yeah.
We already had saw what Governor Mike DeWine had done in the state of Ohio, where he mandated masks for everybody.
I know.
That means the athletes all have to wear masks. And now Michigan State is going to quarantine. And we know the problems that Michigan State has had in the past with their athletics department, Charlton.
Yeah.
So how many players and how many times do you have to test positive for them to shut down the program?
Or disappear for 2 weeks like Mike Pence. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Would you believe that Dr. Fauci, which is considered one of the foremost experts in the world when it comes to infectious disease, that he was saying that he's been getting death threats, and because he's been telling people about science and how to stay alive. Could you imagine going to a doctor who's just trying to disseminate information to keep you and your family healthy, and he's going to get death threats because this culture that POTUS has made, that science is antithetical to health. And science is how we've all learned to live longer, through medical science, different medications that most smart people are able to take, and they take it if they can based on what doctors and medical science have told you. Why would I would just take a stance to say this. The profile of the people giving Dr. Fauci death threats, I would say they look like Donald Trump. Big C, your thoughts?
Isn't our Republican Party wonderful in the United States, Charlton, that people who believe the president against science will threaten the letter carrier, the guy who is delivering the mail that is accurate to the right address, and then you want to kill him? You want to give him death threats because he dropped a bill off at your house that you really didn't want? This is the danger of politics when it leaves where it should be. When you're trying to get into the medical realm, Charlton.
Yeah.
And for months, the president has told people that this will just go away. It's a hoax. You can't believe the science. Believe him because he's the most intelligent person that he knows.
Yeah.
He only knows 2 or 3 people. So,
right.
He's the most intelligent that he knows.
Yeah.
But to have death threats given against Dr. Fauci, a guy who has dedicated
his whole life,
over 50 years of his life, Charlton,
yeah,
to the preservation of life around the world and in America. And to have death threats thrown at him because of what the president says. You want to talk about anarchy? Forget about the riots and the protests in the streets. Look at the anarchy that goes on in the White House and the administration. When you want to have the messenger killed, and he has the message of what's wrong with this country, health-wise, and what can save this country health-wise,
yeah,
but it doesn't meet your political agenda.
And I bet you some of those knuckleheads that listen to that garbage, they probably also go to their doctor before POTUS cuts health care. It's a shame. We're going to take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk about more things that are important in the world of the United States of America. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports now on Spotify and so many other applications all over the world. Just say Big C Sports Podcast. We're bound to pop up someplace. I want to also mention popping up NBA basketball. We know they're down in the bubble, but I just want to make sure we pay a little bit of homage to the WNBA because they're starting. I mean, they haven't seen Mike Pence for 2 weeks, and now you have mostly African American women going to their own bubble and at IMG Academy down there in Florida. I think it's in Bradenton, Florida. And they have the WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, staff. Think about it. And the union players work together to plan a tip-off of the league's 24th season at a single site during the COVID-19 pandemic that's even had the GOP has canceled going to Jacksonville. So they got most of the millionaire black men in Orlando. They got most of the multi-thousandaires, black women, also in Florida. But Donald Trump won't go. The Republican Party won't go. But they convinced all these rich black people to go. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, and that's what is, you know, I've been perplexed with the whole time, Joe, that everybody's, you know, accumulating down in Florida. All these athletes. When you think about that, you know, you talk about the Republican convention. Don't want to put all these old white people in peril of getting COVID-19. You have the WNBA down at the IMG Academy. You've got the NBA down in
Orlando.
You know, Orlando.
Yeah.
Now, last I checked, you know, there was a team that still played football in Jacksonville called the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Where they were going to have the Republican convention.
Yep.
They're still going to go to training camp there next week, Charlton.
Yeah.
You got a team in Miami, which is the hottest city in Florida for COVID-19.
Yeah.
They still have a football team down there, NFL team, and a few colleges, a few universities. Not only that, there's a team in Tampa with your buddy Tom Brady hanging out there.
Yeah.
So you got 3 NFL teams down there, Charlton. You got 22 NBA teams. You got 20-plus WNBA teams that are all, you know, coagulated down in the state of Florida, which has become the epicenter for COVID-19 in America.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying it's safe.
Yeah. You know, Big C, the Titanic, it sank in the early morning hours. It was April 15th, 1912. Titanic. It was in the northern Atlantic Ocean. Same Atlantic Ocean that has Florida bordering, if that makes any sense to you. And I only saw the movie and I read a little bit about it. But before they hit that iceberg, there was a captain on the ship that said, "Iceberg, straight ahead!" And the commander that got off the ship told him, "Keep going, we got to make that record, Big C." And as you mentioned, POTUS won't go down to Jacksonville. He won't let all those white guys with money and power. They decided they're going to trust science. If science is so antithetical to health, why are they trusting science and not going? But you got the multimillionaire black men going to a bubble in Atlanta. You got thousandaire black women going to a bubble also in Florida. I meant Orlando, and then I think it's in Bradenton, Florida for IMG Academy. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars NFL training camp set to open next week as multimillionaires black athletes. They won't even do what the president did, which was like the movie said, get out. They won't get out, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you know, it's amazing when you look at the influx of millionaires into Florida over the past week and even into next week, Charlton. And all of these people are foregoing the science of COVID-19 and what it potentially can do to them. You know, the thing that people don't understand, Charlton, you may get COVID-19, you may beat COVID-19, but it still lingers in your body. It doesn't go away like a cold. It hangs around.
Yeah.
It's like one of them relatives that's sleeping on your couch and don't know when to leave.
Yeah.
That's what COVID-19 is like.
Yeah.
And so if you got that relative that you're tired of having around your house, you can't get rid of, even you throw out the couch, they still sleeping at the spot on the floor. That's COVID-19.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to understand why all of these athletes are so insistent on playing and playing against the science. As I watch NBA players tiptoe out of the bubble for family reasons, and that's health. That's what that is when they say health. I know you talked about Austin Rivers, leaving, but he's a member, of a team that his dad doesn't coach.
Yeah, Houston, yep.
So he has a wife, and his dad has a wife that's his mother.
Yeah.
But, he's going to leave because of what he feels about his internal house, Charlton, outside the bubble.
Yeah.
What his dad stays there and does, that's a different story.
Yep.
But he's leaving because he's thinking about the overall health of his house.
Yeah, and Big C Sports is like, people have their own opinion. You and I don't have to agree on things, and that's fine. But when I say to anybody, and you can only ask people not to get into the contaminated pool enough, but for everybody that's chanting, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, they got all you black guys to go down there where they won't even go. And you don't see it? You don't see it? They won't go, but you'll go. They won't go, but you'll go. NBA basketball, Big C, LeBron James, Draymond Green, Trae Young, Jalen Rose, Skylar Diggins Smith is a complete name. All of them are part of a group, Big C. They're aiming to combat voter suppression. And we know voter suppression has been a big thing by a lot of those men that won't even go to Jacksonville for their own convention. That's like saying, we're not going to go celebrate Christmas. That's their convention. They won't go. But they'll send the black people that they don't like down there. They told you they don't believe in Black Lives Matter. What state did they send the major leagues for NBA basketball and also WNBA basketball to Black Lives Matter, the state where they won't even go anymore, Big C? But they're trying to end the voter suppression. They announced today that they would be partnering with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, donating $100,000 each to help pay the fines and fees of ex-felons to make them eligible to vote in Florida, a place where not even the white people that lied about COVID won't go, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a wonderful stance by those NBA players and former NBA players. Well, when you think about the last midterm election down in Florida, there was a amendment on the ballot, Charlton, to overturn felons who had served their time in incarceration. Once they got out, they would receive the right to vote. And it passed unanimously down in the state of Florida. Governor DeSantis, who is running and doing a terrible job in Florida right now, Charlton, against COVID-19.
The president wanted to go to Florida.
Said, okay, since they get the right to vote, I'm going to initiate another rule that they're going to have to pay their fines that went along with their incarceration. Even though the incarceration had been done, Charlton, he demanded that they pay the fines that were levied on them by the court from their incarceration. If they didn't pay their fines, they would not be able to vote. And we talk about voter suppression in this country all the time.
Yeah.
And why do white people work so hard to keep black people from voting? Because it creates equality in this country, Charlton. That is the one thing that will create equality in this country. Not money.
Yeah.
Not living in certain neighborhoods, but the right to vote, to go and say who should be making the rules. And so now that these men and women have won their right to vote, the governor wanted to obstruct it once again.
Yep. Knowing
that since they had been incarcerated, they weren't earning income. They would not have the ability to pay those fines off, Charlton. So I'm proud of these black men that have stepped up for these former felons, Charlton, that have served their time to the state and the country.
Yep.
And going to help them alleviate these fines so that they can go and vote.
Yeah.
These are the things that scare white people the most, that black people will get out and vote. And they will try to stop that at all costs. When you think about voters being taken off the voter poll, they're trying to obstruct mail-in balloting, Charlton. Even during COVID-19, they want you to go stand in line and breathe down somebody's neck for 2 to 4 hours just to get an opportunity to vote. So I praise, we criticize athletes a lot.
Yep.
And these are the things that athletes do that people don't pay attention to, but they really make a difference in society.
They really do. So you're saying that White House Press Secretary Katie McEnany, she's not going to go to the GOP convention in Jacksonville? Is she not going to go too? She was saying that there's no problem with COVID-19. Big C, your thoughts?
But, it's easy for her to say that, but I guarantee you she wouldn't go hang around her husband's team, Charlton. He plays professional baseball. She wouldn't go sit in the dugout with the guys while they're spitting sunflower seeds and grabbing their crotch.
Yeah, they grab a lot of things too, Big C. I don't know. Sometimes I was even thinking to myself, sometimes it's good to question yourself. It's sometimes to say, you know what? Maybe I should do a checkup from the neck up. Maybe I'm doing some things wrong. I can do some things right. But I'm telling you, Big C Sports is the only sports show in the universe that's been telling you all over the world it's a mistake to go down to Florida and play sports during this COVID-19 era. And to prove that we're right, even the administration is following the advice of Big C Sports now. I'm saying there's some science that say, maybe it's okay. There's some team doctors that said, hey, maybe it's okay. More than team doctors, and as well as many scientists, Big C Sports has been on the side of science. And now to hear that the White House is actually listening to the same advice that we've been listening to, which is scientific, I really feel bad because a lot of athletes, they might just shut up and dribble. But it's a real shame that out of the hottest state in the country that's spiking, they sent our richest black men to that state and a lot of the successful black women to that state. And I'm sure, I don't want to predict anything negative, but there's a reason that the White House won't go. But they send all these young black men down there to go, even after they told you black lives don't matter. At what point does a rat realize you set up a rat trap, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, like I said, I don't think that everybody can stay safe down in the bubble. We've had several players left on their own for various reasons that, they can all call medical, and that way they still get their income because they initially went into the bubble.
Yeah.
But they realized how unsafe it was in the bubble, Charlton, that you cannot keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
But now that you have your Republican politicians saying, I'm not taking my butt down to Florida. You're not getting me in that death trap. Everybody else could go but us.
Yeah. There's a thing called in real estate called blockbustering. Is when you, as an agent, you go and tell your neighbors, a lot of white people are moving into the neighborhood. You might want to get out before the property values go down or before methamphetamine starts spreading to your neighborhood, Big C. It's called blockbustering. And when you have these rich white people that won't go to their own convention, black men, like I think Spike Lee had a movie and he had a guy named Rady Raheem. He said, wake up! Hopefully people will wake up. And speaking of waking up, as Americans celebrate the return of sports, would you believe that POTUS, he already did it in Portland, and now he's trying to get federal troops into Chicago, and what are they? And they're unclothed. I mean, they have their fatigues on, whatever it is. You won't be able to tell that they're law enforcement agents, Big C. They're kind of camouflaged. And I guess the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, she confirmed that the federal agents were being sent into the city, and she doesn't want them there. And I'm just telling the White House is saying we have no choice. Now, they're going to send federal agents into Chicago to do whatever shenanigans they can do. And this is spreading all over the country just like COVID, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as you look at sending these federal agents, and we all saw what they did up in Portland, the assault of American citizens.
Military men. Yeah.
But you send them into these Democratic-controlled cities where they have Democratic mayors. This is a political agenda, Charlton, saying that only I, as a Republican president, can straighten out these Democratic cities. And for 3.5 years, he talked about, look how bad Chicago was when Obama was president. I don't know if people realize there's been more deaths in Chicago since Trump has been president than there were when Obama was president.
I know it.
And that's something that even in sending federal troops in, Charlton, you're not going to abolish. You're not going to abolish gang violence. You're not going to abolish depression. You're not going to abolish unemployment. You're not going to abolish poverty, Charlton, by sending in federal troops. And think about this. He's willing to attack American citizens with these federal troops, but he's not willing to attack COVID-19.
No.
That's what America needs to understand, that you're willing to attack American citizens that are unarmed, but you're not willing to attack COVID-19 that is killing more American citizens than any unrest in any city in America.
Yeah, it's a shame, but governors can stand up, and there are already governors that are banding together to make it stop, and they have to use their power. Like they're not shouting Black Lives Matter. They're using whatever legal recourse they can to stop this madness that's happening in our country, Big C. NBA teams, they just like the NBA has been going down to Orlando. They are planning, they're planning to kneel for the national anthem on opening night of the restart of the 2020 season, and the reports are that kneeling for the national anthem is technically not allowed by NBA rules. But I mean, even more than that, if President Trump will not even go to Florida, and he's the most protected man in the world, what are these black players doing going down into a bubble where even the president, with all of his science and all of his protection, he won't go because the science is more real than they thought? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think a lot of these players have gotten in their mind that this is the only way that they can get their messages out consistently, is that people see them on television talking and showing about Black Lives Matter and looking for equality in America. I think, during their silence was when they were not playing. But when they're playing, they have an opportunity to be more vocal and more visual, Charlton. And they bring more attention to themselves and their cause when they're on television. And that's what they're trying to accomplish by going this season, even though it's at a horrific health risk.
Yeah. If the president won't go, why are our top athletes going? Sometimes even a rat won't bite the cheese, Big C. The NHL will have a 5-second delay on the broadcast and artificial crowd noise when it restarts its season in Toronto and Edmonton, Canada, beginning August 1st. Each arena will have about 32 cameras, which is 12 more than the usual. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the NHL and Gary Bettman has set up their quarantine in Canada because Canada is not going to let you go in and out of the country.
Yeah.
So I commend, Prime Minister Trudeau on all of what he's done as far as keeping his country safe and COVID-19 down north of the border of us, Charlton, up in Canada.
Yeah.
But I understand what Gary Bettman said. I have a lot of friends who played in the NHL, Charlton, and profanity is commonplace with these guys.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of profanity to go back and forth. And so that 5-second delay will allow, the broadcast companies to cut some of that out. They won't get it all, but they'll get the majority of it.
Most of it.
But, to do anything that they can, just like with the other sports, to get the game being played,
yeah,
they're trying to do. And by adding more cameras in an arena, Charlton, I mean, you have to be at an NHL game live to really appreciate all of what it does. But to add another third more cameras in that arena so you can see more and hear more will be great for the viewing audience.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Also, sticking to Canada, when I go to hockey, the floor is so cold. It's always cold in those arenas. But I want to stay in Canada for a little bit longer, Big C. But they've kicked out the Toronto Blue Jays. They say if you want to play baseball with them S-hole country athletes, Big C, from the United States of America, don't bring that COVID into this house, Big C. They're making them play in Buffalo. Buffalo, New York is saying, hey, you guys are welcome here. We know it's a COVID-19 season, but you can come out of a country where COVID is not as harmful as it is here in the United States. And the Blue Jays saying, hey, we'll go, Big C. But they're going to be playing at Shaylen Field in the official conditions of anonymity. Some people were saying, they're saying the lighting's not the best, but they're going to increase the lighting. They're going to give them a couple of days to get that fixed, too. So they're going to leave where it's a little bit safer in Canada to take chances in the United States, one of those S-hole countries that POTUS talked about. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it is not that Trudeau is kicking the Blue Jays out. He's just not letting America in.
Yeah.
Which you got to appreciate the Prime Minister for that.
Yeah.
He understands where the pandemic is coming from, which is south of his border.
Yeah.
And so he's using the southern border thing on Trump.
Yeah.
He doesn't want the
menace.
rat-infected, murderous people coming across this border, bringing crime and violence and death, up north.
Yeah.
And so he's played Trump's playbook to him. So the Blue Jays are going to have to leave the country, Charlton, to play baseball. That's just how hungry they are. They're going to play in their AAA minor league park down in Buffalo, which is not always major league standard, but as you said, they have to get it up to major league lighting standards. And with the money in Major League Baseball, it won't take them but a week to get the stadium to that point, Charlton. But baseball will be played. Yeah,
baseball will be played. I love this country, Big C. I know we're going through some things as a country, but I still love this country. I'm also looking at, when we look at baseball, Major League Baseball, they had a record set for 109 Dominican baseball players. In fact, it's going to be 110 players from the Dominican Republic, Big C, on opening day Major League rosters, and that's by an expanded pool, of course, because of COVID-19. They have some extra players sitting around, but they're getting them a lot of players out of the Dominican Republic, but not as many out of the United States. I think they get money, they get them a little bit cheaper. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about that, there's more Dominican players in Major League Baseball than there are Negro players from the United States in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
The reason for that, Charlton, is that they can go down to the Dominican Republic. They form these academies down, in these island nations. They sign these kids when they're 15, 16 years old, Charlton, and put them in these academies. So they basically bypass their high school years learning to play Major League Baseball. They sign them to these 5-year contracts. So by the time they've gotten to be 21 years old, Charlton, they've either developed or they just thrown them on the scrap heap.
Yeah.
And so when you can get a kid and you can sign him for 5 years, and you only have to invest $100,000 to $125,000 over that duration, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's a lot cheaper than drafting some kid out of the college ranks in America, where his signing bonus is going to be several $1 million.
Yeah. So money talks, Big C. The total players born outside of the 50 states in the United States, they got about 291 of them coming from the Dominican Republic out of 1,026 Major League Baseball players. But I wish all of those guys the best. It's just a matter of getting the opportunity. No matter how challenging it is, they can pull themselves up, if that makes sense to you. Boston, Massachusetts. Boston, Black Lives Matter has a billboard in Boston on the Massachusetts Turnpike. I remember they had the Big Dig that took a lot of shenanigans. A lot of people got money on the Big Dig before the contractors finished that Big Dig in Boston, Big C. But we know Fenway Park, even claimed by the owners of Fenway Park and management, that they've been very hostile to a lot of Black American players at Fenway. And now you have, not that everybody is agreeing with it, the city of Boston, they have a Black Lives Matter billboard over the Massachusetts Turnpike. I guess that's also saying that we apologize for some of our fans' behavior. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the city of Boston and the Boston Red Sox, Charlton, just the history of Boston. Now, Bill Russell would not even go back to Boston when they retired his jersey.
Yeah.
Because of all the racial animus that was thrown towards him throughout his career with the Boston Celtics, Charlton.
Yeah.
And the Boston Red Sox were the last American League team to have a Negro player on its everyday roster. So when you think about how hard this city has been against Negroes in America, Charlton, to put up this 250-foot-long Black Lives banner.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the way that Boston did it, Charlton. They put it up above people, not on the ground where people are going to step on it and drive on it. They put it up above where you have to look up to it. It's on the same causeway where Fenway Park is, Charlton. But to put up a 250-foot-long banner that Black Lives Matter, I praise the Boston Red Sox organization for taking this step. They went head and shoulders above what any other professional organization has done as far as recognizing Black Lives Matter. I guess they're trying to do an appeasement for all the racial animus that they've had over the years against black athletes, Charlton.
Yeah.
But this is a great and tremendous gesture from the Boston Red Sox.
I think they've been listening to you, Big C. They wanted to put it up high so Big C can be happy. Hey, we'll take it. It's all fair. Love them more. I want to stay up to another northern city, Big C. Chicago Bears. They canceled season ticket packages due to COVID-19 pandemic. They don't know if they're going to have fans coming into Soldier Field, and if they do, how many they'll have. So they're canceling the season ticket packages, and we don't know if they're going to even have football this year. We know they're going to start because NBA and Major League Baseball started. They're going to start at Big C, but that's also a statement they're going to cancel the packages for the whole season. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, just canceling the packages really mean nothing. They're going to do game-by-game ticket sales for seats. But the people who had the packages, Charlton, will also be the first opportunity to buy those seats once again. So, canceling packages are meaningless.
Yeah, it's meaningless. Big C, college football. The ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference, is considering an 11-game college football schedule. Would you believe they get with 10 team or 10 conference games, including Notre Dame? They want to bring Touchdown Jesus into the South, Big C. It's not yet determined whether Notre Dame will be eligible to get beaten by Clemson in the ACC championship game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as you look at Notre Dame, Charlton, they participate in the ACC and all other team sports other than football because they're an independent. But they also, on the regular season schedule, I believe they had 4 or 5 ACC games scheduled for the regular season. So this is just adjusting the schedule where Notre Dame would fill in for some of those teams who lost non-conference games. Charlton, they would just push Notre Dame into that slot to fill out the 10-game schedule for those teams. But, I agree with not allowing Notre Dame to participate in the conference championship, Charlton, because which division of the ACC would they be in? Would they be in the Northern or the Coastal Division?
You know how Notre Dame is. They want their own division. They don't want to share with anybody. They want their own division. I want to stick to the Midwest. Barry Alvarez, he warns that Wisconsin athletics is at risk, Big C, if football season is canceled and they can't go. Well, they have more. I guess they're more diversified at Wisconsin when it comes to their student athletes. But they're saying they're projecting to lose between $60 and $70 million if the Badgers play a conference-only 10-game season and loses more than $100 million if the upcoming college football season is canceled due to the same reason that POTUS won't go to Florida, COVID-19. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's across the landscape of college football. We talked about some of the schools that made over $100 million and some of those that made over $90 million just yesterday in our program. Wisconsin is one of those schools, Charlton, because when you look at the Big Ten, it's the most economically valuable conference in America. Their team revenue and conference revenue, Charlton, is higher than all the Power 5 conferences in America.
Yeah.
So when you're stuck in limbo, not knowing exactly what's going to occur, and really what's going to hurt is that booster money, Charlton, when they can't come into the stadium.
Yeah.
So if you can't get the butts in the seats, you stand to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
Camp Randall holds about 80,000 for a home game. They always have sellouts. They travel well on the road, Charlton. So not just Wisconsin, but the Big Ten is looking at an epic economic downfall.
You notice they always talk about how much money they could lose, not how many lives they've already lost in that state. See, I want to just jump on a couple more stories before we close out. Washington quarterback Alex Smith, would you believe that he's been cleared for full football activity after a broken leg? Remember the devastating tibia and fibula fracture in 2018? He's been cleared. So you know what? You mean you could take 2 years off and let things get better before you get cleared to play, Big C? Your thoughts?
You can get cleared to play by a doctor, an outside doctor, Charlton, but it's the team doctor that's not going to pass you on all aspects. You got to look at Alex Smith. I mean, here's a young man who almost lost his life and his leg, Charlton, with that horrific break that he had in Washington.
Yeah.
He had to have bone grafts. He had to have skin grafts, Charlton, because he had a flesh-eating bacteria that almost took his life.
Yeah.
So they had to take the muscle from his hamstring and rebuild his calf with that, Charlton, and his shin muscle. So, I mean, you look at it, and yes, he can be cleared to play, but can he compete at an NFL level? Not with those debilitating injuries.
Yeah, it's hard for guys. Even it's hard for Cam Newton to get a job. He had to take $1 million with no broken leg. Big C, it's all fair and love and war. And one more thing about Washington, D.C., I was just thinking about it. Football team is now called the Washington Football Team. How about the Washington, D.C.? It would represent the District of Columbia. Or how about the Washington Confederacy in honor of POTUS before he's kicked out of office? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's going to be over a year before they get a name that's going to be there for, the rest of the time there in Washington. Because, you have over 1,000 different thoughts, and everybody has their own feelings of what the team should be named. But this comes down to marketing, Charlton.
Yep.
Getting something out of this year of merchandising, just called the Washington, D.C. Club. And then by the time you brand the team once again, Charlton, you're going to be making even more money. Not only do you have to put out a name, but you have to put out a logo.
Yeah.
And so these things, you hire groups, think tanks, to put all that together. It's not just going into the closet, coming out, pulling a name out of a hat.
You don't think President Trump and Daniel Snyder would agree with the Washington Confederates since they both love the Confederacy so much? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, you can be the Washington Redneck. I mean, as far as how it's been operating.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll pay a lot of homage to POTUS and Daniel Snyder. I want to just, before we close out, NFL news, some good news, Big C, in the world of a lot of things that we're going through. NFL news, Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, quarterback of the NFL's most beautiful wife, Sierra, they have another baby. So if he has to be careful, have another baby, because Pete Carroll is always trying, he's always trying to recruit. He'll recruit men and women, Big C. Be careful of Pete Carroll, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, not just Russell Wilson, but you think about the numerous numbers of professional athletes whose wives have been pregnant during this pandemic or even have had children during this pandemic, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they're being forced to go back to work. I mean, congratulations to Russell Wilson and his wife.
Yeah.
But look across the landscape. I mean, you even have college athletes in this situation that have wives that have had children, Charlton. So not just the athletes, but we think about all the young children across the landscape. And, you know, I think last week in Texas, where they had some 85 children, Charlton, under the age of 1 that test positive for COVID-19. And one of them that was 11 months old lost their life against that battle. So as we look at children, and the president wants to say, you know, that it doesn't affect them in the same way,
yeah,
loss of life affects everybody in the same way.
Yeah, we got to do everything we can to stay healthy. You know, ownership is important, business is important, entertainment is important, sports, it's all important, but we all got to stay healthy, and I hope that everybody will. Everybody, please be safe this weekend, and stay out of where POTUS won't go if your athletes are listening. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, don't go where the president won't go. He said, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Charlton, as the sun sets on the life and the great contributions of a civil rights icon, John Lewis, this past week in America, Charlton, what are we going to do as a culture to pick up and rise up and extend his legacy on forward beyond Black Lives Matter in the landscape of America? And also, once again, I want to thank the frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders, for all that you do. John Lewis would have been very proud of you.
Amen to that, Big C. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. You can overcome too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.